More on this, we're joined by Jonathan Schanzer. He's the Senior Vice President for Research at the Foundation for Defence of Democracies. That's a non-partisan think tank focused on national security and foreign policy issues based in DC. Thanks so much for joining us here. You know, we've just heard in Carl's report there about the anger in Lebanon. When we see that woman who was speaking to French President Emmanuel Macron, there's so much emotion and desperation on the streets right now. What needs to change in order for people to get behind the political system that so many people see as being broken?
I'm not sure that there's anything that this system right now can do with these current politicians that will be able to persuade the people of Lebanon to get behind the government. I think what is needed right now is systematic reform across the entire government. A recent report that my think tank just issued indicates that Lebanon is in debt to the tune of $93 billion. That is a remarkable sum for a country as tiny as Lebanon. It's a sign of a gross mismanagement, corruption, and kleptocracy. And of course, lost in all of this, I think, is the fact that Hezbollah, a terrorist organization that is effectively owned, controlled, armed, and funded by Iran, is the linchpin for the current government. It's hard to imagine a reform process that would take hold that would include Hezbollah. And so it's just a very complicated situation. I think this blast, in effect, was a wake-up call to the world that more needs to be done.
Now, you've mentioned there the economic crisis that's been going on. There's obviously the political crisis that's happened in Lebanon. They're dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic. Now this huge explosion. How much worse do you think this is going to affect the country going forward?
Well, this was certainly a poor timing. I mean, you're looking at billions of dollars of damage on top of the billions of dollars that they are already in the hole. The central bank of Lebanon is in debt up to $22 billion right now. 14 banks have racked up an estimated $67 billion of debt. There's a Eurobond debt that is also due. That's $4 billion as well. So this is terrible timing, and the need for a cleanup effort is obviously going to be hindered by the fact that the government hasn't even been able to clean up trash. If it can't clean up trash, it's very hard to imagine how they're going to be able to clean up the mess that has been created by this catastrophic explosion. And then on top of that, there is the question of the port itself. Reports indicate that something like 85% of the country's wheat stores were destroyed in the port explosion. And of course, the port is necessary for all the imports that will keep Lebanon functioning. I've not heard a good assessment of what will happen to divert those imports to ensure that the Lebanese people continue to get the food and necessities required for daily life.
And on that point, if the government can't even provide basic services such as cleaning up after a disaster, having an emergency disaster response plan in place, how much trust can there be in the investigation which is now being promised, this 5-day initial investigation? Who is meant to put everything right? Is this something which should be left to Lebanon, or, as we're hearing from some sides of the political argument in the country, that this needs to be an international investigation?
Look, I think an international investigation is probably necessary, although you can see that even right now, I mean, there's a tribunal that's underway to investigate the murder of Rafiq Hariri from 2005. It's now 2020, and they're postponing the results of that investigation. It was due to come out, I think, tomorrow. And they're going to postpone that. So what you have is, I think, an international community that has been very wary of destabilizing the country any further. I think an international investigation would probably take years, and that is not the result that the Lebanese people want to hear. That woman who was expressing frustration to President Macron, I think, is very indicative of the people. They want action now, and the idea of tribunal to look at it for years will not satisfy the frustrations of the people.
Jonathan Schanzer joining us today from Washington, D.C. Thank you very much for your time.